I'm Cheryl Bruno, and you're listening to Gospel Tangents.
It's the best source for Mormon history, science, and theology. I'm Rick Bennett. I'm excited to continue our conversation with Cheryl Bruno and John Dinger. They're the co-authors of Come Up Hither to Zion. It's a biography about William Marks. And we're going to be giving away a copy here quickly. So go to gospeltangents.com/contest, and probably after the next episode, we'll give away an autographed copy to one of you listeners. So sign up today. In our next conversation, we're going to talk about William Marks' reactions to polygamy, especially he was the president of the High Council, so that's really interesting. We'll also talk about the martyrdom of Joseph Smith, and then William Marks defending Sidney Rigdon. So you won't want to miss this conversation. Check it out. So it was really interesting to me to dive into the book and see his reactions to polygamy, especially. And I remember writing down here, on page 79, there's kind of the famous quote where Joseph Smith is reported to have said, if you don't accuse me and I won't accuse you. Mm-hmm. And so I was interested to see that came, was that from William Marks too? Because I know that's a big thing with John C. Bennett as well.
No, that was in the Joseph Smith's history. We have that quote from him.
And so, do you find that problematic? And I know, Cheryl, you're a big polygamy expert, and so would like to go there a little bit. Is that a little bit problematic, and why we had all of these people that would do unauthorized polygamy? Because, well, you know, if nobody talks about it, it's okay, right?
So really, the reason why there is a huge controversy on whether Joseph Smith practiced polygamy or not is because we don't have much information on it. We really don't have the documents that would tell us one way or the other. So what we do see is we see that John C. Bennett is practicing this sort of polygamy where he will tell the women that it's okay to have these relationships as long as no one finds out about it and as long as they don't tell and as long as it's kept a secret.
I think we still use that line today, right?
I don't think so.
Well, I mean, when I say we, I mean, as a larger society, a lot of people do that.
Okay. So anyway, so John C. Bennett, we know, is doing this. But then for Joseph Smith to at the same time make a statement, not referring to polygamy, but referring to other things about, you know, that if we keep a secret, God will not accuse us, then that kind of brings him into the, you know, the group there. And so it kind of gives us a little bit of reason to believe that perhaps that was the way he looked at it as well. But we don't have anything specific, and that's why it's been a big controversy, because we can't say for sure that Joseph was involved in this. From the contemporary evidence.
Right. But we do have the Nauvoo High Council minutes where the polygamy revelation is read before the High Council. Right. John, yes. That's your bailiwick, right?
Well, this is one place where we might be... I am firmly.
I just saw that
this
Cheryl.
Is fun. This is the fun part.
Cheryl and Christopher Blythe just had an arm wrestle. I just saw that yesterday.
We did.
No, I truly believe, and I think the evidence strongly points that Joseph Smith was a polygamist.
Okay.
And I do. I have to go on record as saying yes, I do too. And I think there is evidence. There's not a lot of contemporary evidence, and right there in 1842, 1843, there wasn't a lot of contemporary evidence.
Yeah.
But then we do get the High Council. Go ahead, John, with that.
Well, what I was going to say, if we can stop back a little bit, just with the High Council in general, all these hearings, right, that the John C. Bennett spiritual whiffery, that all was in the High Council. So one of the frustrations in the High Council is they often refer to the person presiding just as the president. And so there are meetings where we're not sure if it is William Marks running it, Joseph Smith, and sometimes even Hiram Smith. Wow. But William Marks would have been there. He would have heard all of this. And the testimony that came out, when you look at it, it was later published in the WASP, and there were things that were
That's
redacted.
William Smith's paper.
Yes, William Smith.
He was ready to sting the enemies of the church.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So the evidence that he is hearing, right, William Marks, as he's standing there, are people saying, we were told Joseph Smith said this was okay. We were told Joseph Smith, but then, very clearly we have William Marks came in.
Well, actually, we have them saying...
William Smith.
We have them saying we were told this by the leaders of the church,
Okay, fair enough.
Okay.
which John and I both think is Joseph Smith.
Yeah, but no, fair, no, that's a good clarification. So William Mark sees all this, right? And he eventually, I think, understands something's going on because, yes, they bring the revelation to a high council meeting. The meetings themselves are very sparse. I think it's one line. But then we have affidavits of 3 or 4 people who were there who then describe hearing the revelation read. And then another very interesting piece that I've argued in, actually, Secret Covenants.
Oh, nice.
Is when
We'll
William
go there too.
when William and Wilson Law testify in front of the grand jury, they give one of the dates of July 10th, 1842, and I think they're 2 days off. I think they meant July 12th because nothing important happened on the 10th. I think they were trying to recall as best they could what day it was that this revelation was sort of made public to the High Council.
Okay, and so, because I think DNC 132 lists the date as July 12th, and so you think that's the day that the revelation came before the High Council?
Oh boy, now you're making me, I might be confusing which day it was actually read. Cheryl, do you remember?
No, I don't remember dates at all. I'm getting older.
Oh,
That's how I am too.
I have to look up my dates.
I remember July 12th is an important
Is the day it was
date.
written.
It was the day it was written. So it wasn't written and presented to the High Council on the same day?
No,
Or do you think
no.
it
No,
was?
so
later?
it would have been later. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So I'm trying to understand where the dispute is because I think both of you believe that the revelation was presented to the High Council. Do you agree with that, Cheryl?
Yes, we have so many testimonials that they were there. You know, people who were there said that that happened. And so I don't think we can discount those. Some people will say that those, some people will try to go through each, there's like 8 of them, right? Or 12 of them. And some people will go through each and try to discount why their testimony is not important. But that's really, I don't feel that you can discount every single one. And we'll talk about in a minute what William Mark said later. But there is, I think, evidence to show that DNC, or at least something on polygamy, was presented in that High Council meeting.
Okay.
And then others will say maybe there was a revelation on eternal marriage that was presented then, and so maybe they got it confused. But there is enough evidence to show that it was at least something regarding polygamy, and 132 definitely fits the bill.
So where's the disagreement between you and John?
Oh, I think she's just more politic about it.
Well,
Being kinder and softer.
no, I mean, I have started to get a reputation with many people that I give validity to, people who are skeptics that Joseph Smith ever practiced polygamy. And I do think that they have many good points. On this one, though, I feel that they don't have much of a leg to stand on for this particular point.
Okay. Okay. All right. So let's talk about William Mark's reaction because he doesn't really say much at the time, right?
Right. So what's interesting is this is years later when he is serving as first counselor to Joseph Smith III in the reorganized Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And he meets with their Council of 12. And the Council of 12 asks him specifically, did Joseph Smith practice polygamy? And he replies by saying that Hiram Smith brought the revelation before the High Council. And the way that he's responding to a question on polygamy makes us realize that he is talking about this 132, that it was brought before the High Council on that day.
Okay. So a skeptic point of view would say, well, this is probably after 1860 now.
Right.
So
Well,
it's too
actually,
late.
most of the skeptics will say that this is the one point of evidence that they have a very difficult time resolving.
Oh, okay.
Yes, it's a very solid piece of evidence.
And it goes against William Mark's interest.
Right.
Wouldn't he love to say, as the first counselor to Joseph III, that, yeah, your father never was involved in polygamy, but he doesn't. And I think that's what makes it so reliable.
Oh, okay. Well, very good. Okay, so he gets into some trouble in Nauvoo because he doesn't want to participate in polygamy, right?
What do you mean by trouble? I guess what time? Yes, he does get into trouble.
But a little bit later.
He's never excommunicated.
Oh, really?
See,
I thought I remember reading that.
That's the idea, and you probably have read it somewhere because many people have said that he got excommunicated, but he was never excommunicated from the church.
Okay.
But it is... That's one of the real fascinating things is William Marks and polygamy. He was by all means a monogamist, right? But he was invited into certain things like the Quorum of the Anointed. And Andrew Ehat has argued, and I agree, that to be invited in there, you had to accept some form of polygamy.
So here's where we have the...
Okay.
This is the argument.
Here's where we have the difference, right? So go ahead.
But Andrew Ehat just argued that there had to be some belief in it, and sort of the Hiram, how Hiram originally believed in polygamy for the hereafter, so that he could be sealed to his wife that had died, not polygamy on earth, but then Hiram changed.
William Law.
And William Law.
Accept it for a short period of time.
Yes, had to same way. That it's
5
for
minutes.
For the hereafter. And so in my mind, that's how Marx must have. I find Andrew Ehat's argument pretty compelling. And so because he never lived it and certainly didn't countenance it, that is the way that Marx would have done that. But I mean, Marx was very accepted into these groups. Him and Rosanna were the first couple sealed after Joseph and Emma. Oh. And so he was a very much one of the founding members of that quorum. And then he was in the Council of 50 and things like that. But Cheryl?
So what I see about Andy Ehat's thesis is many other historians have followed along with this thought of Andy Ehat's, where he said that in order to get the higher ordinances, they had to accept polygamy at some point. And that's why they say Emma.
Would that be like Hiram, like... My first wife died.
Right.
My second wife. So it's kind of serial monogamy.
Well, yeah, for Hiram it was, but for example, Emma Smith.
Right.
He said that Emma Smith had to, and then that she decided that these two girls that were living in their home could be Joseph Smith's wives, and there's kind of a question whether she thought it was going to be wives in very deed or not. But anyway, what I feel that William Marks provides an example, because from what we can see, he and Rosanna never, even for a minute, countenanced polygamy in any form.
Not even serial monogamy.
Well, no, I mean, we don't have any evidence that they believed in that. And so I think that shows that somebody didn't have to necessarily be on board with polygamy in order to receive higher ordinances. And so what I argue in my chapter is that Emma Smith did not accept polygamy, even though we think that she did, but perhaps she never countenanced it, whatever.
And you think Cheryl's up in the night?
No, I think Cheryl is really good at what she does, and this is an interesting point to argue. And I think that reasonable people can see it in other ways. But I agree that the Marks never countenance polygamy.
And that's why it was so fun to write this book together, because then, sometimes we had to soften what we were saying. We couldn't just say, this is the way it is. Sometimes we would have to say perhaps. If the two of us did not agree, we would then show both sides of it and then say perhaps it was this, perhaps it was that.
Yes, but at most, it would have been the view of polygamy in the hereafter. You could be sealed to a dead spouse kind of thing.
Okay. Well, very good, because, it's interesting that, because I swear I read quickly. The problem is there's so many good books out there. I can't spend a lot of time on any one book. I got to jam through. So I don't always, I definitely don't read slowly. So this is good to get clarification on that. So as I recall, there were still different polygamy allegations before the High Council. Can you guys talk about how Marx dealt with those? I mean, we've talked about John C. Bennett. We've talked a little bit about Joseph Smith.
Yeah. So you have that initial big group of them, the John C. Bennett ones. And sadly, like I said, we can't tell necessarily who the president they're referring to is.
It's either Marks
Right.
or Smith or Hiram.
Or it could be
Smith.
Hiram, I think.
Yeah.
Right,
Okay.
because there's one case where there is a division in the High Council, and I think it's 8 out of 12 agree that the person should be cut off, and then others do not agree. And then what we have is the president, who we don't know who that is. Is it Marks? Is it Joseph Smith? But anyway, the president talks to them and basically changes all their mind, and then they are unanimous.
Get on board, yeah. And so we have that.
Oh, to let him off, not to
Yeah.
excommunicate him. But
Which sounds like something Joseph Smith would have argued.
maybe Joseph Smith would have said, let this person off, right?
Yeah.
But we have one later on the other way.
Okay.
Jordan Hendrickson, right? He goes in front of the High Council, and William Marks says, this Jordan Hendrickson sounds like an absolute rat, but he must have somehow got the sympathy of Marks, where he did go find a new wife in Nauvoo, and it came out that his wife was dying at the time. And so Marks, after the hearing, said, well, I think we should, let him off. The council actually objected to that and changed his mind, and he was cut off. So it did go both ways. But like I said, we had this big initial bunch of, the John C. Bennett ones, but then they would trickle in from time to time over the years, and I think oftentimes they would be cut off. I mean, we have the Henry Cook selling his wife for fish story and all of those.
Right, and what's so interesting, though, is many of them who were cut off were kind of immediately brought back in, and given high callings after that as well. And so we wonder if that was just kind of Joseph Smith's way of, publicly saying it's not okay, but then privately, and as William Clayton wrote in his journal, Joseph told him, just go ahead and take it, I'll cut you off, and then I'll bring you in basically through the back door.
I was just going to ask you about that, because I thought that was a really interesting story.
The one thing, though, I would say is these tricklers, they were never polygamy insiders. My guess is like this Henry Cook, this John Hendrickson, they were probably never authorized by Joseph Smith. These were probably more adultery kind of situations.
Okay. There's another one, Gustavus Hills. I know Marianne Clemens talked about
Right.
that.
And that one may have had
Theodore Turley.
some permission.
You think that one had permission?
I said it may have had.
Oh.
The women, when they first testified, said that they were told that it was okay from the leaders of the church had approved it. That's what they were told in order for Gustavus Hills and others to have relationships with these women. They said, well, this is approved by the higher leaders of the church.
I mean, the question that comes up in my mind is this just they've heard rumors, and so therefore they're invoking Joseph Smith's name to cover their own scandal? Or did he really give them permission to do this?
We have no definitive evidence either way.
No definitive evidence, but the vast majority of these people weren't in the quorum of the anointed. They weren't, they weren't in the inner circle.
So does that lead you to believe they were using Joseph's name in vain?
I would think so.
Okay.
Hearing rumors.
And as long as nobody finds out about it, it's okay, right?
Sort of. That's how I would argue it. I think that, the people who he truly gave permission to were generally the 12 and a few others. It was a pretty small group of people that were very close to Joseph until his death, and then it really exploded at that point. So some of these people, right, like maybe Gustavus Hills, maybe Turley, but certainly not the vast majority of the people that show up there in front of the High Council.
Okay.
That's how I'd see it.
Anything to add, Cheryl?
Yeah, I think he's...
You agree with that? Let's dive into the martyrdom, because I was really surprised to read that William Marks was so close with the Smith family that he actually helped dress the body. Cheryl, can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yes, there was a cohort that Joseph Smith had brought together in the Nauvoo Legion, and I think there was 12 men, right? And these men, at the time of Joseph Smith's death, William Marks was one of them, and there were, I think, a couple that had apostatized, a couple who had died, and so they replaced them. But these people were the ones that were the pallbearers of Joseph Smith's empty coffin as it went to the graveyard.
Well, it had sandbags in it, right?
Yeah, right. So, but they were very close to Joseph. William Marks was very close to Joseph in many different ways, through Freemasonry, through, the church, through the Quorum of the Anointed, through the Council of 50. In all these ways, he was very, very close with Marks.
So even though Marks, to our knowledge, never accepted polygamy in any form, he was still a trusted confidant of the Smith family that he would do this honor.
Right.
Yes.
And John likes to say that polygamy was not the litmus test that it was under Brigham Young. Under Brigham Young, you showed your faithfulness to the church by being a polygamist. But we don't think that in Joseph Smith's day that it was quite like that.
Okay.
Yep.
So after the martyrdom, now, John, you had mentioned this case where Marks felt compelled to defend Sidney Rigdon because, of course, soon Sidney and Brigham Young are vying for leadership of the group. Can you tell a little bit more about that story?
Yes. So I think this is one of the really good parts of the book.
Yeah.
So we're only going to be able to give a little bit here, but it was a very confusing time. So right after the martyrdom, Emma Smith believed that Marks should be the successor.
Right.
And there were people that agreed with that, including William Clayton, thought Marks should be the successor. This also kind of goes to Marks' integrity in that he clearly didn't think he was because he didn't push for it. There is a very real possibility, had he made the push before the 12 got back in town, he would have been the president of the church. In fact, I don't even know that it's an argument. I think he
agree.
Absolutely would have.
Oh, wow.
But he didn't. He was the one who actually sent a letter. It came out later in a hearing to Sidney Rigdon to say, Joseph Stead, come back. And so Rigdon got back first, and it looked like Marks supported Rigdon. I don't know.
But Emma and Clayton supported Marks.
Yeah. But so Rigdon comes back, and Rigdon gets there a little early, and Marks does seem, I don't know if he's 100%, but he does seem to kind of support Marks. Rigdon calls for a meeting where Rigdon can speak, but then the 12 get back, and then we have, their tussle. And we have the meeting, is it August or September 8th, where we have the supposed transfiguration of Brigham Young.
Which historians say didn't really happen.
Didn't happen, and it's certainly not in the minutes we have. But, Young wins. And at the end of that, Young says, and now let's turn to William Marks. I'm going to let him stay stake president. And so he is kind of staking his ground that I'm in charge now, not you, William Marks. And then from there, it kind of gets sour. I think where it does is Mark says, no, I'm fine. I'll go with the group. But then shortly thereafter, it's published in a newspaper that Marks was the one who brought Rigdon there. They have further conversations with Rigdon where he kind of admits, yeah, Marks was going to be X in my church. And so it sours. And so when they excommunicate, the excommunication is September 8th. Of Sidney Rigdon. So Marks must have known what was going to happen to him. But again, he had integrity and followed the rules. And then from there, it was, I can't really think of any other word but harassment. Marks had things stolen. People tried to destroy his businesses. And then when he left, there was some bragging that, he left without having to be whittled out.
Oh, yeah. Let's talk about the whistling and whittling brigades. Can you share?
Let's start. First, I just want to, there's one point that I thought was very fascinating about this whole thing is since William Clayton was sort of feeling that William Marks would be the next leader.
Okay.
The point where he changed his mind, where who was it he was talking to?
Well, John Taylor was in town.
One of the 12.
Newell K. Whitney.
Newell K. Whitney.
It was Newell K. Whitney.
So, right. So he's talking to Newell K. Whitney and, talking about how Marx is going to be the next president. And Newell K. Whitney says, if that happens, then we're going to lose our blessings, meaning the polygamy, the patriarchal order that they're following. And so Clayton all of a sudden says, oh, yeah, he's against polygamy. So that's not going to be someone that we support as the 12. So that kind of shifted the tide there.
But it seems like he wasn't really interested. He was a willing co-worker, but he didn't want to be in charge of anything.
I sort of see William Marks like that. He was okay with being in charge, but he didn't have a very strong personality to lead an entire people, So he would rather be under someone, like Sig President is under, the first presidency. And so he wanted a first presidency to lead, and then he would support them. And he told the 12 several times that he would support them. And the problem was he kept having to go in over and over and over and there. Are you sure you're going to support us? Yes, I will sign a document. Mm-hmm. Are you sure? Sign this other document. And finally he just got sick of it and said, no, I'm not going to sign anything else. He was really mad. And he took it home to his wife, and his wife said, no, you better sign it. So, it just went back and forth. And like with all the harassment then, he just felt he needed to get out of town.
And so rather than be excommunicated, he just got out of Dodge. Right?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Well, and truly, scripturally, remember, this isn't how it was on the ground, but scripturally, the High Council outranked the 12 apostles for the center stake of Zion. At the excommunication, it's really such a weird hearing because it is the High Council who is supposed to excommunicate Sidney Rigdon, but Brigham Young took over and served as like witness and prosecutor and was calling witnesses. It's really one of the strangest hearings there is. But I would argue, I don't think the 12 could have excommunicated William Marks.
Why is that?
Because he had his calling and election made sure.
Well, that doesn't matter. We've had lots of people excommunicated.
We have, but it was a kind of a tumultuous time.
That would have been a precedent setting thing, I guess. That
it would have.
Yeah,
it would have. But technically, scripturally, Marx outranked the 12 in Nauvoo,
and they wouldn't have had the power to excommunicate him.
Oh, so it was nice that they scared him out of town, basically.
Mm-hmm. Well,
nice for the 12, I guess I should say.
Yeah, and then we do see the 12 starting. Well, actually, the 12 couldn't even remove him as stake president. So the High Council, when all this was going on, voted and said, we're going to do our business without William Marks at our head.
And so heartbreaking because William Marks had just represented Sidney Rigdon at a trial, and then they have a trial against him without him being there or
which
being
broke
represented,
the rules.
Yes.
Which definitely broke the rules and was very heartbreaking.
Yeah, but they really couldn't touch William Marks, and so they didn't, and they were glad when he left. But that's one of the myths of him being excommunicated. It just is not true.
Okay. I hope you enjoyed a conversation with John Dinger and Cheryl Bruno. They are the co-authors of Come Up Hither to Zion, William Marks, and the Mormon Concept of Gathering. Now, we're going to be giving away a free autographed copy by both Cheryl and John here soon, so go to gospeltangents.com/contest, and you could win this book. In our next conversation, we're going to talk about Marks and Strang, and we'll also talk about John Dinger's book, Secret Covenants.
I think William Marks becomes a little disillusioned with the Strangites, and then he looks around. Who else is in contention for leading because he wants to belong to a restoration church. Mm-hmm. He believes in the Book of Mormon. He believes in restoration. So then he goes with Charles Thompson and the Benemiites. So that's a very interesting group.
Thanks for listening, and I hope you to continue to enjoy Gospel Tangents. Consider becoming a Patreon or go to gospeltangents.com/shop, and you can get a cool tie, a hat, or even a nice mug. You can also get a sweatshirt. So check it out at gospeltangents.com/shop.